All right, traders, George here with the Trading Authority, pressing on with some more videos here. I want to get these out to you for tomorrow. I want to show you some things that could be very beneficial to you if you're looking at the gold miners, and I've got a handful of the big ones to look at. I'm just going to launch into these charts and explain to you what I'm looking at. This is Newmont Mining, going from 2001 to the spike high it had up here, and looking at a retrace grid. This divides this price action up into some key ratios. What's important to notice is not only do these key ratios come in at special spots on the chart, but what's happened in terms of the sell energy has also collided with those areas, confluence, okay? You see this big green line right here? It looks like I'm measuring this sell impulse. Well, I kind of am, but I'm actually measuring this one first. So there's a sell impulse 1, an outside return, and then a move down. There's a beautiful one-to-one move, a one-to-one harmonic that comes in very close to the 764. It also happens to come into the 1.5528 or 55.28% extension of that initial sell impulse. So not only do we have a one-to-one harmonic here, but there are two key math ratios that collide. And if we look to the left, we also have a balance beam right there. That's where there's a lot of trading. The air pockets, not so much trading. Those air pockets can allow price to move very quickly through them. So that's why the break here made price move so far. Had nothing to do with anything else. There's just no support there. Here's the likely support zone, and here's where the bottom feeding comes in. So upper 28s is where this started to flip the spike here. Lower 29s is where it cleared the ceiling. It closed Friday at 29.95. That's some pretty nice action there from Newmont. Now, this is also a dividend-paying stock, and it's gotten over the 4% yield category, and that's going to make it attractive to some people as well. With price staying over the ceiling here, and for round numbers you could call it 29.50 to start out with, this spike here, let's call it 32.50, okay? And then we move into this hot zone here. We're going to call this 35 to 35.50, and then we move to the floor here at about 39.50. Those are the main price points to watch to the upside. This 39.50 floor, if the bulls are able to move it up that far, huge overhead resistance to be expected. However, if the bulls can crack into that, they can then march their way right up to the top of this heavy commitment zone. Over that, it's a new ball game, and we'll talk about that if that happens. But the neat thing about this is that it spiked below this heavy commitment zone and it spiked back above. That's not the common action for a bear continuation market. That's not the common action for the gold miners very often at all. However, it just happened on Thursday and it continued on Friday. This is something to watch for next week. This makes an attractive entry zone here where you don't want to hold a break to new relative lows here. It could be moving as low as 24s, and below that, high chance of retesting 12s. So it's real critical to watch the risk control on any entries, especially when it's the worst sector out there. All right, Rheingold here, GOLD. This one has gone on a very steep move up. It's really started to oscillate heavily here, and it just recently broke some key support swings from several years ago. It's also below the spike here around 82 or so. This also pulled back to a key confluence area. It pulled back to, I don't know if you can see it, but this initial impulse here, it pulled back to the 1.4142 extension of that, colliding with the 54% retrace. There happens to be some math ratios that make that a little bit more meaningful, but you can also see that they happen to be razor tight with each other there. The 1.618 of that extension comes in with the 618 retrace of the entire party here, and there's some other confluence downstairs with some of these numbers as well. That says that these ratios are really playing nice with each other, and it gives some good target zones to look at. Okay, now when we can combine some of those with some key structure areas, then we're really cooking on the front burner. It bounced sort of at the most necessary point here before moving down into a much lower area. And with this area here holding, this spike right here comes in at 72s, 73s, and then you go right back up to the spike here in the low 80s. And those are really the two main price points above where it is right now. Another thing, I've got this rectangle here. This initial impulse here is one that happened to show its hand in several places. The swing low to the swing high there, from the absolute low to these spike highs right here. And then what's really incredible is that also happens to be the exact same height between what would be the bull impulse 618 and the bear impulse 618. You see how that fits in there? So this is something that is greater than a computer program or the internet. This is nested activity within human nature, or we could just say nature in and of itself. It doesn't mean that we're going to zip up to that point or this point per se, but it means that we can use them to come up with some target zones. You can watch some of my earlier videos with some price predictions in gold and in the S&P, and you can see how well those targets were hit and how traders did things there. Okay, so this is gold, G-O-L-D, the stock. All right, this one's in some pretty nasty shape here. This is Barrick Gold, ABX. What's happened with this guy? It's gone from 56s down to 15s, right? This is exhibiting the same sort of pass-through effect that gold has done, i.e. the futures. As this has moved down to the absolute floor here, there's some structure spikes down here. That means prices move down to these areas here. But there's a floor, i.e. the commitment zone, where all the trading has happened, starts right about here. That's exactly where price spiked, and it started to move back up. With this area here holding, it's got a key beam to watch to the upside. You've got a floor of around 1775 and a ceiling here of about 2080, let's call it, okay? 2075 would be nice there. This is the process where it starts, okay? So if this area here holds, then those are the next key upside targets. But if it can get over that, that's exactly what we want to see if we want to be long anything, is to see price taking over the ceiling of a balance beam, if it's going to where it's been before. And look at that air pocket, all the way upstairs here to the 29 camp, essentially. Now here's another couple things to look at that make this really interesting. One is, this green line right here represents this outside return to this spike, and then this move down to this point just below the balance beam. So that's measured with this line here. It also happens to be about the same length as that move right there. So we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave move down, where not only the first harmonic here happens to be the same length as the fifth harmonic here, but that entire length, if we call it a unit of 1, I wonder if the traders have ever done anything like that before. And it's about where this symmetrical double top went on its first 1, 2, 3 down to this point here. So that has shown its hand before. Very similar in terms of the angle and the length. There's that outside swing high, and it really nails it on this second one right here. So that harmonic has showed its hand before. With a 1-to-1 harmonic, that's often where you at least find a pause. This has got an added benefit. There is a key commitment zone right where it spiked, and with just a little bit more of a nudge, this thing could really start to move up quite a bit. So there's a handful of gold stocks. Now granted, they're on weekly charts, it's big picture stuff, but this is how you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together to think about if-then around price. Of course, you can show up to the live room and we can talk about it on the spot as trades develop, but I want to get a couple of big picture gold scenarios out to you as we start our new summer volley of videos here on YouTube. Thanks for all the comments, and we'll see you back here in just a little bit.